Hello, welcome, Brian. Welcome to our audience. This is episode 11 of the Brand Spotlight, and we have with us Brian from Greater Than. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing great.
That's
Yeah, thank you so much
amazing.
for having me here.
One more time?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, before we get right into the interview, I just want to take a moment to talk about our sponsor. That's the agency I've been building up over the last several years. It's called Brands Connect. That's brands with a Z. We are a marketing agency, but we are not a typical marketing agency. We focus specifically on building on building marketing campaigns that are tailor specific towards brands. In fact, this interview series has been a direct result and outgrowth of that. Without further ado, welcome to episode 11 of the Brand Spotlight podcast. We are streaming on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live. And then we are repurposed as a podcast on all the podcast platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And of course, the replays are available on all those above mentioned platforms. We'll get right into the interview. This is the question that I generally open up with. I know you're with a company called Greater Than. In a sentence or two, Brian, how would you describe your company?
So, Greater Than is currently the number one hydration drink for pregnant and breastfeeding moms. Um, it's super popular with them, like due to the high electrolytes, no added sugar, but most importantly, the community that we've been able to build amongst moms who've really powered this brand forward over the past 3 years. That's sort of the
Wow,
high level.
that's amazing. So let's unpack that a little bit. The target market is pregnant and breastfeeding,
Correct.
and the reason for that and the ingredients of the ingredients in this hydration drink. Currently, it's hydration drink.
Yeah.
The ingredients of this hydration drink are specific to pregnancy and breastfeeding. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So it's worth pointing out a little bit of the origin story of Greater Than. The business has been around for over a decade, and most of that time was spent as a sports drink, like one that was really focused on like super high electrolytes without added sugar or chemicals. And about 3 years ago, almost to the day, after testing a bunch of different audiences on Facebook and really sort of expanding our brand positioning, we discovered that it was pregnant and nursing moms who were using Greater Than almost as a lactation supplement. What most people don't realize is when you're pregnant or nursing, you lose a lot of electrolytes. You're chronically dehydrated, especially if you're breastfeeding multiple times a day. And obviously, the dietary needs of nursing moms are stricter than most people. So we like basically started as a sports drink, and then moms pretty much said, absolutely not. We are using this product for ourselves. They were sharing it with their mom friends, posting about us in private groups, etc. So we decided to go all in on this specific audience about 3 years ago. Um, and since then, I've seen a massive amount of growth within this niche.
Now there are many hydration drinks in the marketplace.
Yes.
I haven't yet seen one that's targeted to pregnant and nursing. I have seen other products target pregnant and nursing, and I've heard of many products that are hydration use pregnant and nursing as one of their targets because it's so essential during pregnancy and breastfeeding. What was it about your product that made it such a perfect match to that audience?
Sure. I guess I'll just take you back to August 2019 when this pivot happened. Like at the time, like we were trying to go after soccer moms because we figured this product would be really good for young kids who are playing sports, as well as the mom who might be trying to improve her own health. And what happened was, I guess
So
some of
just
those
to
moms,
interrupt you, you saw it as a family product that would basically the mom would be the purchasing that make the purchasing decision. It would be great for her and good for her kids too. So that was your avatar, your use case profile.
yeah, that was our hypothesis. Like I mentioned, the company had been around for about 8 years before I met them. Um, and we were trying to figure out like who is a niche audience that could actually benefit from this product, because we do use organic, non-GMO ingredients, our price is much higher than a Gatorade or just a regular sports drink you would get at the store. And we figured soccer moms who are buying for themselves and their families would be the ones who would be the winner for us. And what we found was after a few weeks of testing this on Facebook and through a bunch of different landing pages, that some of these moms started to post pictures of their breast milk in the comment section of our ads and sending us these super long, detailed emails with like their milk supply stats and all of this stuff, saying when they would drink greater than, their milk supply would double or triple overnight. And at first we thought it was a joke. We didn't really take it seriously until it kept happening over and over again. We were getting like dozens of these every week. And then one day, about 3 years ago, we decided to basically take one of these testimonials and the photo that this mom sent, unedited, just word for word, and just post it as an ad. And pretty much overnight, it was clear that this was our audience. We saw our acquisition cost drop by about 90% within 2 months. Our sales increased so much that we ran out of stock, unfortunately, right before COVID hit. So we were out of stock like during the early quarantine months, but we're still able to grow pretty massively that year and have shown aggressive growth year over year since then. So to answer your question, this product itself, again, started as a sports drink that had really, really high electrolytes and a really good nutritional profile. We did a lot of research on who is an audience that might benefit from this and also have the willingness to pay the premium price for the ingredients that we use. And it was basically moms who adopted this product and have since told us that this is the thing that they choose for themselves and recommend for all of their other mom friends who are pregnant or nursing.
That's an amazing story. The company's been around for a really long time. You 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 go to the whiteboard. You're like, okay, for whatever reason, something prompted the brand to go to the whiteboard and to see who should we really target.
Yes.
You go to the soccer moms. You like it that they have control over the family spending. You like it that they're going to use it for themselves, for their kids. They start anecdotally sending how good it is for breastfeeding and pregnancy.
Yes.
You start essentially. They start sharing the pictures. Essentially, you start with sharing one picture, and then that snowballs into dropping your acquisition rates and running out of inventory.
Correct.
That's a really cool story. I'm going to press on you, and I know you answered this, but I'm going to press on you. Do you see, and ask you the same question, but from a different angle, do you see a reason why those people came to your product as opposed to other electrolyte products that have a good nutritional value?
Yeah.
Or are there not so many in the industry?
Well, there's two parts to that question. One, like you hit on it a few minutes ago. For whatever reason, Greater Than is the only hydration drink that's ever specifically gone after this audience. And we still hear to this day a lot of people saying, like, thank you, because like literally no one else is talking about this. There's been a lot of other pills and supplements and lactation cookies and a lot of other products that have tried to address the milk supply needs of moms. But there's been no hydration products. And most hydration products, as you know, are focused on sports and athletics and focused on like that kind of stuff. But they totally ignore the needs of moms. So we just saw a huge opportunity to really own that niche, which we have. Two, the reason we've been able to own that niche is because of the credibility we get from moms sharing with other moms. As you can imagine, if you're pregnant or nursing, you're very, very strict about what you put in your body. And there's a lot of people who could drink Gatorade, they could drink Pedialyte, they could drink, some of these powders. But if you look at the nutritional profiles for those, the sugars, the chemicals, the lack of real fruits, the lower amount of electrolytes that moms need from those just don't make them viable. So we were able to not only articulate the nutritional profile of our product, which is how moms even found out about us in the first place, but because we already have that 3 years worth of credibility and sort of that that grassroots word of mouth from moms, we feel that us being mom approved gives us sort of the stamp of approval to keep going versus if we were just some sports drink trying to just like show a pregnant woman in an ad, but it's clearly not like made for that audience or speaking to them in a meaningful way, chances are that that product wouldn't succeed with this group.
Wow, you really nailed the marketing of this. Now I do want to transition over to talk about the actual products.
Yes.
I did look quickly at your website. Oh, cool. Is that
Yeah. I mean, it's worth pointing out that it's not a lactation drink per se. So I drink this every day. Ironically, we have a lot of men who drink Greater Than, including some pro athletes who were introduced to Greater Than through their breastfeeding wives. So they brought it into the house themselves. But as you can see, it's a pretty gender neutral package. So we do have a lot of like men and athletes who have started drinking the product, which is an interesting full circle like moment.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, it's about who you're targeting and then who will use it regardless of who you're targeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are not necessarily the same. Back to the product. So I did take a quick look at your website. I saw it. You're essentially a ready to drink package, and you just come in different flavors. Do you have is that are you focusing on just one product category, and how is that divided? How are all the different flavors divided?
Yeah, right now we have 9 different flavors. We give people plenty of options to be able to build their own bundle. They can mix and match as they want. We sell them in the liter size cartons, as well as like some smaller travel sized as well that fit a purse very easily, or in like a diaper bag. So yeah, we do have a lot of options there. We currently are only ready to drink, but we have a lot of really exciting developments coming down the pipeline to expand our products that we offer. And our mid to long term goal is to shift away from being solely focused on the breast milk increase or lactation and really focused on the first 1,000 days of motherhood and being the trusted hydration like source for moms during that very, very pivotal journey, and eventually expanding outside of hydration into some other categories.
Wow, that's exciting. So I guess we'll have to bring you on then as you make those announcements.
Yes. Yeah, I'd love to be back for that.
Why did you choose the carton? I know a lot of the hydration companies either come in what I've seen in the last with the proliferation of these drinks, either come in the almost like a supplement. They come in powders or they come in plastic bottles. Why did you was there a specific reason you chose a carton?
So our co-founders, like Mark and John, the other two on the team, they are very environmentally conscious. So we just like knew that we did not want to use plastics. It's something that's very important to our customers as well. Just like being as environmentally friendly as possible. Um, and with Tetra Pak specifically, to your point, most sports drinks are in plastic bottles. Tetra Pak, the paper cartons we use, um, are biodegradable, they're recyclable, etc. So we really didn't want to move away from that, even though we could cut costs and go into plastic. Um, and overall, it's been a really, really good move for us. We found a lot of success, specifically with these new cartons that we launched, that like are leak proof. A lot of customers really like how stackable they are. It's very easy to like put them in a cabinet versus plastic bottles, which just take up a lot of space. So overall, the Tetra Pak has been a really good move for us.
And how long have you had all these flavors?
Well, when I joined the company 4 years ago, there were only 3 flavors. So basically, since spring of 2019 to present, we've launched the other 6, just gradually over time.
Nice. So far we really learned a lot about the your brand mission.
Yes.
We learned about your products, how it's and the different it comes in a carton, all these different flavors. We didn't speak so much time about the nutritional value of these cartons. Could you unpack that for us?
of the like paper cartons themselves?
No,
Or
the greater than drinks.
yeah, sure. So like I mentioned, like outside of like moms replacing their lost electrolytes and lost fluids from pregnancy and breastfeeding, a lot of the other testimonials we've got have said it helps with my my muscle cramps, my headaches, like feelings of thirst. A lot of moms will give it to their aging parents who have their own like age-related hydration needs. I've brought Greater Than to weddings where I know there's going to be a lot of alcohol, and it's been a huge hit because people have said, I literally have not had something that has either prevented or cured a hangover as fast. So we have found that Greater Than, just like Pedialyte, which I would say is probably a pretty comparable item to us in terms of their price, in terms of how they're positioned in the market, the versatility of the product. We found that Greater Than is sort of a healthier version of Pedialyte for a lot of people. If you're sick, or if you got your COVID shot and you feel awful, like people will drink Greater Than instead because there's no added sugar or chemicals, because it's real fruit juice. In fact, it has the most like fruit juice of any major sports drink on the market. Yeah, so just in general, we found that it's a very versatile hydration product. And that's one of the reasons why moms and families stay with Greater Than even after they finished that lactation journey.
Interesting. And what is it? What are the actual active ingredients inside there that are aside from the electrolytes?
It's coconut water, fruit juice, and sea salt for the most part. The coconut water and sea salt adds the electrolytes. But one of the advantages of Greater Than for a lot of people is a lot of people don't like coconut water at all. They think it's gross, but they know that it's healthy. And with Greater Than, you can't taste the coconut water. So it gives you all the benefits of coconut water without that sort of weird aftertaste. And then when you add in the sea salt, that adds an extra boost of electrolytes. We are sweetened with monk fruit, which is zero glycemic. So if you're diabetic or have any blood sugar issues, Greater Than is far better for you than any other option on the market. And the fruit juices that we use are all non-GMO and organic. So it checks a lot of boxes for that, clean label drink that is like really good to drink multiple times a day without increasing your calories, carbs, or any of those, pesky side effects that you would get from the other competitors.
Wow, you really thoroughly covered the brand, the actual brand mission and what you're doing and the really everything about the both the hydration, the nutrition profile, and the target market of who you're going after. And that's been amazing. I
Awesome.
want to transition. I want to transition to talk about the origins of the brand and with a focus on your involvement and how you got involved with the brand. That whole story.
Sure. Let me just close Slack real quick. So, like I mentioned, the company sort of had two lives. The first 8 years was really as this sports drink, like I mentioned. Like Mark and John, the other co-founders, are brothers, like based out of Chicago, were weekend warrior types, and really wanted a healthy alternative to the sports drinks that they were seeing at CrossFit, at their gym, at the golf course. So they did spend a few years working with a top sports scientist to basically engineer what they felt was the healthiest sports drink on the market, one that had 2 to 3 times more electrolytes than a Gatorade or a Body Armor offers, but with no added sugar or chemicals. And I would say that those first 8 years as a sports drink, as you could imagine, it was just very difficult to scale. If you aren't a huge multi-billion-dollar company, it's just really, really difficult to sort of crack into the sports drink space. But they were able to have some regional like wins within golf courses, some CrossFit gyms, like some yoga studios, but nothing that really scaled beyond the Chicago area. And because this business had been bootstrapped that entire time, when I met them in 2018, they were basically like, we have 6 months left, so we'll try anything. And just to give you a bit of background about what I was doing that led to this, at that point, I had spent my entire career, so about 7 or 8 years at that point, like working in e-commerce, like starting in-house for The Gap, and then spending most of that time really in the digital marketing agency world in LA, helping to launch and scale e-commerce startups. I was one of the first employees at Hawk Media, which at the time
Oh,
was like 12 of us in a 2-room office. And then by the time I left 2 years later, we had like 120 employees and have worked with probably every type of e-commerce business you can think of. And when I met Greater Than, I had already left Hawk and had been working at a boutique agency that was focused on fewer clients, but just higher engagement work. This was the same agency where we launched Magic Spoon, we launched Our Place, we launched a bunch of other direct-to-consumer brands at the same time that all of this was happening. So I met Greater Than, they were a client. They basically were like, we'll say yes to anything. So we did a bunch of tests and a lot of surveys, a lot of interviews with the existing customers that we did have from the e-commerce business. Plus, we also just started to build the e-commerce business. Like the website, the brand was still sort of in its infancy at that point. So we spent about 6 months sort of redoing the packaging, just like sort of updating it before we went live with our tests that I mentioned before, where we had a bunch of different niche audiences that we thought could benefit from Greater Than. And one of those audiences that we hypothesized back in summer 2019 were soccer moms who would buy for their kids and for themselves. And then that would sort of be our pipeline into the house, into the family. Fortunately, some of those soccer moms were pregnant or nursing, and they were the ones who saw the ads that we were running. They were the ones who posted those comments about their breast milk. They would tag 10 of their girlfriends in the comment section of our ads, like send us these 5-paragraph long fan mail letters saying that they've tried literally everything else. They've had multiple kids before and weren't able to nurse, but when they drink Greater Than, finally the milk is overflowing. And of course, we don't promise this. Like, we haven't done a clinical trial yet, but that is something that's on the pipeline for the future. But we had enough anecdotal evidence over the past 3 years where it's like, okay, clearly there's something here. And after speaking to doctors and some lactation consultants and some medical professionals before we really decided to go all in on this audience, they all agreed that what's most likely happening is that these moms were chronically dehydrated from breastfeeding and from nursing or from pregnancy, and Greater Than is replacing those lost electrolytes in a more efficient way than the other options that were on the market. Like I mentioned, we haven't done a clinical trial yet just because it's expensive, and we're still a startup. And to your earlier point about how there never really been a hydration brand going after this audience before, believe it or not, there's been no like major clinical trials into what leads to more breast milk for women for 40 years. For whatever reason, like breastfeeding moms have been a chronically ignored audience of people across the board, not just from businesses, but also from the science community, in academia, etc. And a lot of these moms that we've talked to and interviewed have said another thing that they like about Greater Than is that we actually don't ignore them. 100% of our ads, if you look at our Instagram, all of it's about them. And it's all about highlighting sort of the realities, the highs, the lows, the struggles of motherhood, giving them tips and sharing mom hacks, like really augmenting their voice. So in addition to us like selling this electrolyte replacement for them, we have also been able to offer them a spotlight, really, in a way that, according to them, no other brand has really done quite in this way. That just gives you sort of, I guess, a 2 or 3 minute version of that pivot story.
yeah, that was amazing. I really like the whole story. The origin of the two co-founders, the brothers who really created it for themselves. It sounds like they did see at least some amount of success. They did see regional success. They did see, and they saw customers. They created it for themselves, essentially. Just at a high level, it sounds like the barrier to entry of competing with the Gatorades of the world. It's not easy going up against the Gatorade and that getting into all those gas stations getting into that Gatorade aisle. Like there's something that Gatorade's doing right in terms of marketing, and just have that many dollars behind them that
Yeah,
they can do that, and their distribution costs and etc. We won't go there. And
totally.
you are coming off of this. You are coming off of D2C agency work, and you mentioned Hawk Media. I've actually met the team at Hawk Media. They look like a really fun crew. So that's pretty cool. I've been to their office before in Santa Monica in LA. Yeah, it was several years ago, but they were working with the hottest brands at that time. So that's really cool that you got that experience. You went to a boutique agency working with, I think you mentioned Magic Spoon, which now is, I think they finally got into retail now.
Yes.
So you've got the experience of those D2C consumer driven brands that are not just selling a commoditized product, but they've taken commoditized product and really branded it really well. And it's not just about branding well, but their product has to be able to stand behind that brand.
Yes.
Sounds like you came across them when it came to Greater Than. They had a expiration date essentially of 6 months. Do whatever you can to save our brand. That's the pitch I heard, and you started putting some theoretical data sets, and you started testing different audiences. And
Yeah.
the soccer mom is what really worked. And from there, the pregnancy and breastfeeding really, really took off. And then the added layer was, you mentioned the word spotlight. Obviously, we like that word here as the show is the brand spotlight. But I feel like it was more than just a spotlight. It was really building them a community, a voice, somewhere that they feel heard, respected, and really that sense of community. So Greater Than has not just been a nutritious hydration product. It's really a if I may use the word, a comfort brand for someone who's pregnant and nurse feeding. There's a calling card on that brand. This brand is for me. I'm for it. It's a good match.
Yes.
Did I repeat the story well enough?
Yeah, you did. And one thing I think is important to point out, well, like two things. One, like I mentioned, when all this was happening, so in summer 2019, we had just launched Magic Spoon like a few months before, like in April of that year. So we were seeing like them just take off pretty much immediately. And then our place, we were still pre-launch. So all this was happening at the same time. And one of the things that I think looking back on why those three brands have all like done well is the product itself. I think a lot of e-commerce businesses, like you mentioned before about the commodities, they focus more on like the marketing tactics and growth hacks and all of that, which are very important. Like I consider Greater Than to be a perfect example of growth hacking. We used like data and analytics to identify this niche in this cohort, and we were able to like really like hammer home on that. But it wouldn't have been possible if the product wasn't good. And if you think about how Magic Spoon succeeds, like they have an excellent product. It's quite delicious. It checks a lot of boxes. The brand is, of course, beautiful, but a pretty brand can get you to try something. But if you're going to retain customers, the product needs to be good. Same thing with Our Place. They produced something that was a very novel, like gadget, if you will. It saves space. It's really good for an apartment living. It's Instagram friendly. It's an 8-in-1 pan. Like there were so many amazing things about that product that made it pretty fun to market. And I feel like Greater Than, I remember the first time I had Greater Than, like there was almost like this light bulb that went off where it was like, this isn't a sports drink. I don't know what it is, but it's not something that's for sports. I almost saw it as like a healthy juice box. It's like a nice treat that tastes great. And it's like, at the time it was a juice box, so there were smaller cartons, but it has so many other healthy qualities to it that Mark and John really did not compromise on at all. They never added sugar, they never cut costs. Like, so the quality is something you can really taste. And I felt better. I felt like my skin glowed. I felt like my like dry mouth went away after the gym. I felt like if I wanted a snack that wouldn't be super sugary and keep me up at night, Greater Than is a good go-to. So I feel like the product itself needs to be excellent in order for a brand to really have a chance to succeed. unless you have a massive amount of money behind you and you can just basically pay for your success and pay to get into stores, pay these slotting fees, pay to get into vending machines. And I think that that's the barrier to entry for sports drinks. But like I said, because people have totally ignored breastfeeding moms pretty much forever, we like didn't have that barrier to entry with them. And now that we've earned their trust, and have really sort of built this community, or a like mom unity, as we like to say internally, they've rewarded us with their loyalty and pretty much with a massive amount of word of mouth. A good example of this, like as you probably know, there's been this baby formula shortage all summer, which we haven't really like capitalized on. We haven't like really done anything to try to like be like, hey, drink greater than instead. But before this even became national news, we already started going viral in ways that we didn't understand. We're like, where's all this traffic coming from? Like, where are these sales coming from? Not knowing about the formula shortage for a few weeks, we found out that it was moms, our customers, who were posting about us in these private mom groups, telling other moms, if the formula is out in your area, drink greater than to help with your milk supply. So they were already doing that without us having to prompt them, before we even knew what was going on. And that wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't focused on the community aspect. If we had just focused on the growth marketing tactics, then we could have hit certain KPIs, but then we would have ended up screwed, like after the iOS stuff and like all these other things that are holding the industry back. Instead, we're actually seeing better results now than we did last year because of that community. Our acquisition cost is the lowest it's been. Our retention's up. Our word of mouth is up. So like whenever I talk to founders or other e-commerce businesses about like how to balance, like their marketing tactics, I tell them, of course, test everything, do the growth hacks, like try everything, and also focus on the stuff that isn't scalable. Like, for example, John, one of our co-founders, he calls customers on the phone. He handles our customer service. Even though he's, the founder of this big business that's growing, like it's a business that's built brick by brick. And that community aspect is something that is really, really hard to quantify the value of until you need it. And Greater Than has finally reached a point where I feel like there's so much trust and love that these moms have for this brand and this product that the sky is really the limit for where we can go.
Cool. I love how you really focus that you could do all the growth hacks in the world. If the product doesn't support itself once they get the product, once they try that product, it's essentially clickbait.
Yeah.
That's the reality. I guess growth hacking can be clickbait, but on the other hand, when you lead people to a product that has an internal value, an inherent value, that just creates retention, creates people coming back. I also love that you even coined the term mom unity. That's I wonder if that's if that's a hashtagable term yet, if that worked for you.
It has been used by other people, so it's not something that we could like trademark or anything, but we have used it internally in emails and stuff, and it just gives moms a chuckle. I feel like moms, like I said, like when they're pregnant, tend to be put on a pedestal, and pretty much as soon as they give birth, are almost ignored. From what we've heard, like they tend to sort of be cast aside. They're sort of expected to like don't talk about breastfeeding, like don't show this. Like we've had a lot of people say like, who still breastfeeds anymore? Like, is that even a thing? Like, there's just been a lot of pretty awful stereotypes that we've heard from a lot of people about breastfeeding moms and why we should stop wasting our time with these people. Just focus on sports, just focus on that. And I'm really glad that we stuck to our guns and really decided to not ignore this extremely like valuable and very impressive audience. Like I mentioned, we hear these stories, like dozens of them every day, from these moms about the struggles they go through, how physically demanding breastfeeding is, which people don't really think about. Like it's not something that just is like the Hallmark card. Like a lot of moms have to breastfeed 8 hours a day. And if they stop for one day, like my like friend did, like their milk supply might dry up permanently. So it's something that, it is like a sport for these moms. They track their progress, they sort of like know how much milk they produce, like um and Greater Than being this brand that actually helps enable that and helps them has been a very rewarding experience.
That's great. Now, I want to ask you why, when you were working at it sounds like Greater Than, just correct me if I'm wrong, you essentially worked with them at an agency. You
Correct.
were doing why did you there's so many there's so many good products. You said you tried it and you thought it was a great product
Yes.
before you even helped build the brand around it. There
Yeah.
are many great products that don't end up making it making it, so to speak. What do you think what do you think is the difference between a product that's good, that has inherent value? What do you think is the difference between one that makes it and one that doesn't?
Well, thinking back to all the clients I've had that had great products and are no longer around, there's a few things. Like one thing that I've noticed over my career in e-commerce, it's why I went into e-commerce in the first place, is a lot of businesses don't necessarily make decisions with the customer in mind. I've noticed many times where, for example, with this Greater Than thing, I'll come to them with a bunch of spreadsheets and data and research saying, look, like there's a huge opportunity for this drink for CrossFit bros to really be a lactation drink. That's what the data is showing. That's where we should like really like go in. I would say most brands would totally ignore that because they themselves aren't breastfeeding moms, or they don't want the product to be like that, or their friends won't like it, or their investors, or whatever. It's like I've noticed most of the time, a lot of these major decisions are about opinions and less about like objective data about the customer and what they're saying and what's best for them. And I feel like with Greater Than, we've always been an extremely customer centric company. Um, and there's been times where we've done stuff and tested stuff that seems totally random and like it totally violates best practices and all of that. And it works extremely well because it's tailored to the needs of our customer. That exact same thing might not work for someone selling a suitcase, but it does work for us. And I could say the exact same thing about things that might work very well for, our place, or for shoes, or for purses, or whatever it is that we're trying to sell. So I would say that being extremely laser focused on your customer, not only in terms of the analytics, but also the qualitative part, actually talking to customers. Like I spoke with a customer back in early 2020. So back when we still were doing well, but we thought it was a fluke. Like we still weren't like making a ton of money in the early days with this like nursing mom thing. I talked to a customer for 30 minutes and she told me like all the stuff about how ignored and isolated like moms can feel after they give birth, how, you know, for whatever reason their personal nutrition gets put on the back burner because they feel pressure to only focus on the baby and no one is really focused on them. So we're like, that's interesting. No one is focused on mom and on her needs, like both biological and emotional. But we can help address those things. And that, again, is us listening to our customers qualitatively and putting that into action. And you can see from our brand currently, like literally, like that one conversation changed everything. Instead of us having our Instagram solely focused on, showing like beautiful influencers that we've hired to hold up our cartons, we don't do any of that. We only show like user generated content that our customers send us unsolicited and for free. And we don't edit it. We don't like do any of that. We don't cherry pick people that fit a certain aesthetic. We barely talk about our product at all on social. It's really focused on them. And I feel like that is something that like might not work for every brand, But that never would have happened if we hadn't just picked up the phone and talked to people, or met up with them in person, or done things that aren't necessarily scalable, or like hacks or things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. But I have at least two follow-up questions to that.
Yeah.
How do you know it's not a fluke? How do you know it's worth consistently going after and really re-strategizing your entire all your campaigns to fit that, and essentially even rebranding the product to fit that? How do you
Yeah.
know that it's not a fluke and it's something you should go after?
We knew it wasn't a fluke because we literally kept selling out. Like, I mean, we couldn't make enough product to like satisfy the demand that we had. And I would say for the first 2.5-ish years, we were like on fumes from an inventory standpoint. Like there were times where we really had to sort of pull back on our spending, pull back on our ads, like all of that, to just not be sold out for 4 months on end. And that wasn't from supply chain issues. It was literally because the demand for this product would just like skyrocket. Like we would go viral on TikTok randomly, and then we sell out of something. Um, it almost became this grassroots movement, which was amazing, but also unpredictable. And until we had enough inventory to sort of see like what the ceiling was and like how high is, we just knew that we just had to keep going. Plus, the other piece outside of the financials and like, all of that and the KPIs we were hitting was the other bottom line, which is we really like helping these moms. Like I mentioned, we have tens of thousands of these testimonials and fan letters and all of this stuff coming in from these moms. That's just incredible to read. And we knew that this brand isn't just, us like selling this drink to people and like seeing the money come in. It's really more than that. And I think that is especially true this summer when a lot of moms can't feed their babies because there's no baby formula. So they're feeling extra pressure to like produce as much milk as possible. Um, and a lot of moms have started to share their milk. If they have like some extra milk in their freezer, they'll be like, hey, like I'll donate it to this milk bank nearby or to the women's shelter, or hey, here's like some moms in my community who I know underproduce and I overproduce. And I think seeing that sort of like community and moms like really helping each other and us being able to be a conduit for that has been another bottom line that I think that we hold ourselves to beyond solely the financial.
Nice. I do want to focus on something you said, that that one of the things that you think might be the difference between brands who are successful and are not, despite having a great product, is really the willingness to listen to the market and see what the market wants and really becoming customer centric. How does that play out when generally, if you start a brand, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, to say it mildly. You usually went after a specific market you decided to invest in. It might have been something you were missing, something you wanted, and there must have been some obsession with doing that. It's not there's you can't convince me that it's a purely rational decision. Obviously you need you need rationality to back it up
Yeah.
and make sure the finances make sense. But how do you go from that shift to become obsessively focused to solving the customer, even though it was a completely different a different passion than you originally had?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the product itself, like the drink that I have in my hand, that is something that was really initially made for people who do sports, people who do yoga, who do CrossFit, who run marathons, who play golf, like the usual suspects, which is totally fine, to be honest. I feel like in the early days, just do whatever it takes to make the best product. But then in the next phase, once the product is sort of formulated and all of that, I think that's where a lot of brands struggle, which is they don't do the whiteboarding, where it's like they objectively sort of remove their own opinions from the equation and map out who are all of the people that even need this product. Or even before that, like what are the things that make this product worthwhile? Like with Greater Than, in fact, the exact ad that we ran that led to this was a direct comparison between us and Body Armor, another sports drink that moms have been drinking for a while, for the exact same reason. This ad was literally just a super informational ad. Like, here's how much sugar we have, here's how much sugar they have, calories, carbs, plastic bottle versus paper carton, like basically doing the math for the customer. And I think if you're a new brand, that's what you should do. Like, look at your competitors objectively in any way that you can to say, are we better than them? Because if you aren't, then maybe the product that you're trying to sell isn't something that is going to scale. But if you do have at least 2 or 3 areas where your product is objectively better than the other players on the market, and you can articulate that well, like both visually or verbally or through copy or whatever it is, I feel like that is a really, really crucial exercise for brands to do. If they can't objectively articulate how their product is better, then I don't know if that passion they have is going to actually lead to more sales or scale. But if they can, then they need to exploit those things. And like I mentioned back in that testing phase before the pivot for Greater Than, that's what we did. Our ad results were awful, but the ones that were least awful were the things that focused on the no added sugar, the clean label ingredients, showing the fruits, not showing any people, or biasing our audience by only showing super ripped men or women doing headstands on the beach, when most people aren't those people. So I just feel like if we hadn't done that exercise, we never would have even gotten to the point where breastfeeding moms would even see this product and try it, because we wouldn't have had any real real point of difference that is defendable and easy to explain to people.
I really like how this conversation is going, because it's brand agnostic, so to speak. It's good for really any brand, but it also tells a lot of your story. It's not like you went to the whiteboard, you put out an ad copy, and it just blew it out of the park. A lot of times we see a developed brand and we think that's the path to success. But it sounds like you actually made a lot of ads, and a lot of them didn't resonate. But what you started seeing was you started optimizing. Okay,
Yes.
so none of them are doing well. And I'm going to use that extreme example. Let's say it's not your brand, but let's say none of them are doing well. But you see that certain ads are starting to resonate with a certain subset of people.
Yes.
And really to nail down, okay, oh, that's interesting. Let's see what we can do to optimize that ad even more. And this ad process is really a creation, and this is what you said, that the ad has to match the passion of the person.
Yes.
The ad not just has to match the passion of the person, but has to be able to articulate. A lot of people are very passionate about what they do, and they could even might even be able to articulate how good the brand is. However, once you start being able to articulate how good the brand is for this specific person for this specific reason, I think that's where the game changers happen. That's where, the second you're able to solve those pain points in a very specific way, that's where you have a brand. I shouldn't say a brand. That's where you have a sustainable and retainable brand, and it's really not because of the brand itself, but it's because that's one very important piece. But it's because of the ad copy, leveraging the ad copy to do its job, which is to articulate why my product is able to solve those specific pain points for you specifically.
100%. And another example of this that we just talked about is Our Place. Like I mentioned, like basically it went launch Magic Spoon in April. This whole Greater Than pivot happened in August to November of 2019. And then we launched Our Place in, I want to say, September of 2019. So this was all happening right at the same time. And Our Place wasn't an immediate overnight success. We actually had about 7 or 8 months of a lot of testing that we had to do, just like you described. Like we had to see, like, okay, like this isn't going to work, but there's potential. There's something here to this value prop, to this audience. It's almost like piecing together what your brand should be through data and through performance marketing. And I feel like that's something else that is a huge problem. Like a lot of, at least in the marketing world, branding and performance marketing and growth hacking are seen as totally different. And I don't see them as different. I see them as complementary. And for me, I like to start from the performance side first so that you can figure out, like, basically have your customers tell you what your brand is versus you pushing what you think the brand is on people. If you have to push something on people, that's expensive. If you have to try to force people to change their behaviors or try to understand something, that's not going to work. And with Our Place, like um, at launch, it was really less focused on the product itself and the gadget aspect, and really more focused on, like showing ads of like a multicultural group of people enjoying food at a table and stuff, which is beautiful. I loved it. Post purchase, I feel like that's something that you show after someone has sort of already entered the funnel. People don't care about that if they have like 3 seconds on their Instagram feed. And just like I said, with Greater Than, our best ad that launched all of this, was just a simple ad that just articulated and did the math for people. Here's how we're better than everyone else with real numbers. That's the ad that worked very well for Magic Spoon when they launched. It was literally like, here's how many carbs we have, here's how many carbs Fruit Loops have, here's how much sugar we have, here's how much sugar Cocoa Puffs have, or whatever it is. Not some beautiful branded ad. The thing that turned things around for Our Place in the spring of 2020 was an ad that just showed, here's the 8-in-1 aspects of this pan. It can steam things, it can saute, it can do this, it can do that. Like literally, it was just super easy. That ad just dropped our acquisition cost by 40%. And then when we did a more polished version of that ad and kept iterating it, that really like sent them off to the races. And that's why I was saying, like, I feel like branding, in my opinion, should come after you've already figured out product market fit, after you have figured out how your product is better, what the main value props are, what people actually care about. And then you can craft a brand around those things versus, I guess, sticking to your guns a little too long and then like letting the clock run out because you've tried to force what you think is a great brand because your friends love it on people who might have a totally different background than you. Like a person who's an entrepreneur in Venice Beach probably has a totally different background and aesthetic choice than someone who's a mom in Kansas. And that's really more the average person that you're like selling to. And I just have seen consistently, time and time again, so many businesses ignoring all of those people, like the masses of people, to only like sell to people like themselves, and then they like figure out why they aren't scaling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I do want to, I do love that approach of like, you're not selling to your 3 friends in your fraternity house. That's
Yeah.
not what it is. And I mean, if you just want to go after the fraternity market, okay, fine. But then everything else has to fit that. And you have that specific market. Go to where your customers actually are. I also liked your approach of really following the performance data, but not just following the performance data. I don't remember all the words you used, but you mentioned that you have to have a good product market fit. You mentioned following the performance data, and you mentioned that the branding and some other stuff has to all be part of the same same holistic plan.
Yes.
You can't have one without the other, and they both have to be leveraged correctly and properly. And you did mention you like to start at the performance data. So could you unpack that a little for us? Could you take us through that holistic that holistic marketing plan why you specifically started the performance data. And before you do that, I will throw a curveball at you. We just had Kent on from Neurogum, and he actually, the way they went to market was they started with outreach to journalists. And I asked him why, out of a million things, why he chose that, and he said very simply, we didn't have any money, so that was something that we could do for free. We could reach out to journalists and do that. So do you see? So part one, I want to see how you see it fit in that whole plan. And number two, do you see money as a hindrance to testing? Because it costs money to do performance data tests, or do you see as if you have the $100 to spend it on performance data?
I'll start with the second question first, and then work backwards. So another example is a former client. They sold like electric bikes, and they didn't have any money to spend on performance marketing. This was back when I was at Hawk. So I was like, okay, we have, let's say, $5,000 a month that we have to somehow turn into like $60,000 a month or whatever it was. Like what do we do? So instead of us just being like, hey, we're just going to launch some Facebook ads and hope for the best, we did a lot of research seeing where is there already a community of people talking about this product or a similar product that we can go after in a cheap way. And at that point, we found that there was a lot of people in the, like, what are they called? People who like live in a city and bike. There's like some special word for them on Reddit. They're like commuters or something. I forgot the name. But there was this community of people on Reddit specifically that they don't have cars, they live in cities, they are obsessed with bikes, and they like were already talking about not only this brand, but also a lot of other competitors. And at the time, and I'm sure still now, like advertising on Reddit is like super cheap. So that's what we did. We both posted organically on Reddit and we advertised there for like, a 50-cent CPM or whatever it was. And we sold out. And we also posted on Craigslist in all of the major cities where we already knew our traffic was. So for example, if we had a lot of people in Miami or whatever who like were coming to our website, they were showing interest in these bikes, we would just make a Craigslist posting for free saying, hey, we're selling this bike, just like you would if you're selling your bike from your garage. And then we just had like some information about the bike. We showed some pictures that we took with an actual iPhone. And then we were like, hey, if you want the bike, like DM us or whatever it was. And then we would send them a link to the website. So again, it's like, I feel like performance marketing and growth hacking isn't just launch Facebook ads. For some brands, that works very well, and that's what they should do. But if you have a community that already exists, that is already somewhat viral, that already talks and already has sort of like a lot of, shared language and all of that, like figure out a way to go after that community. For us, Greater Than, in general, like most moms are on Facebook and Instagram and now on TikTok. So that's where we're at. But if they were only on Pinterest and there was nowhere else, then that's where we would be focusing all of our efforts. So I would say, regardless of your industry or your product, if you're looking for a cheaper way to test or like find product market fit, think about where there's already people clustered. It could be meetup groups. It could be some other way that's relevant to that audience, and then figure out ways to advertise to those people that way. And it's sort of like a backdoor approach to that. And I guess the first question that you were asking, which is like, what is that sort of like roadmap? I feel like I've sort of just described most of it. Like, think objectively about like, one, is your target customer someone who is even worth targeting? Like, is it someone who has the money to afford what you're selling? Do they have enough passion about it to actively keep buying it? Is there some sort of time limit? And if so, what are you going to do about that? Like, for us, moms breastfeed for only a certain period of time, and then their body stops. We figured out a way to work around that, to like help our company financially, and to like, again, build more of a community. Are these people viral? Do they talk? Do they share? Is there already a lot of word of mouth that happened with this niche? Or is this really more of an individual thing? Like, I feel like there's a lot of sort of criteria that you can look down to see, like, if the person who you have in your mind is someone who isn't worth targeting, then who is? And the very first step would be to objectively look at your product and see, is there anything we can brag about? Do we have 20% less sugar than the main competitor? Great. Brag about that. Do we, have this paper carton that is recyclable and eco-friendly? Brag about it. So I feel like once brands start doing that and start thinking about this community, then it's just really figuring out how to get this in front of them in as cheap of a way as possible until you find some signs of product market fit. It might not be this overnight slam dunk like we had with Greater Than, where it was an accident, basically. We didn't know that the breast milk thing would happen, but it did. And because we had already done all of this work leading up to this to figure out, like, what are the value props for this brand and, like, all of that, it was a very easy, well, not easy, but it was much easier for us to sort of throw gasoline on that than if we had to start from scratch, from that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I actually really want to zoom in on this idea of performance marketing, because before this call, when I heard of performance marketing, I right away assumed paying money for Facebook ads and paying money for Instagram ads. And what I've learned from this conversation is that, yeah, in the case of Greater Than, when you clearly had, I don't know how big of a budget, but you clearly had some budget to do that with a tiny bit of runway to test it, that's what you did there. But for a bike company, you went to Reddit and you leveraged Craigslist, which are both natural places where Craigslist is where people looking for good price on bikes are looking. They're there to buy that. And Reddit is communities of enthusiasts. What I also thought was compelling was that wasn't so different than the success you were talking about with both Greater Than and with the ad copy on Greater Than and Magic Spoon. When you said you looked at their competitors and saw that that these newer companies had two or three things better, you really honed in on that. You were really just following the customer demand that was already there and said, you're buying this product anyways. Now spend a few more dollars and get the better version of the product you're buying with a completely different brand experience. So I think that there's a takeaway here for anybody, really, is that it's not about how much money you have. It's about looking for ways how to latch onto the community, find those creative ways, and that way you'll be successful. What I loved about the bike story is it sounds like that's pretty cool that the agency was willing to work with them despite the low ad budget and the fact that you now were on pressure to actually provide certain X return, which is usually the opposite of what we hear from marketing firms. We'll take your money and provide almost no return because it's all brand awareness or whatever terms they'll say, and that they do have a point. Like, your product and your sales process has to be in place, but it's amazing you're able to really work with them. So that's a really fascinating perspective of how to understand your place in the market, both in terms of product market fit and in terms of marketing. If I dive a little deeper, you're really forced to take I'll use the word consultative approach, but a very analytical approach of just thinking outside the box, thinking about the creativity, but not just for creativity's sake, not just as an art form, but really to dive deep and see who is this product good for, and where can we find them in the most effective and lowest quality ways.
Correct. I mean, it's just the basics, like who, what, where, when, why. Like, I know it sounds like super basic to say that, but I would say most brands who are starting off don't have real answers to those. They have opinions, and some educated thoughts and guesses and possibly a way to test. But I don't know if they have like real data backed reasoning for those answers. And I feel like that's really the difference between like just like spending money to drive brand awareness and like true performance marketing. Because performance marketing is all about getting the answers. It's about doing the detective work and sort of like figuring out like with all these clues, with all these competitors, with these audiences, with these people, like what is the solution to the mystery? How do we sell these bikes in 3 months with no budget? How do we take this really delicious and high quality drink and find someone who's willing to pay the premium for it and actually find enough benefit to keep drinking it? Like I just feel like most brands have a lot of room for improvement there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but what's fascinating is it's what I'm taking from this conversation is it's actually not complicated, but it's maybe somewhat of internal and mindset work to be able to accept the reality that that one's opinions, which may have even been the thing that led to the creation of this product, etc., does not answer the question of who, what, when, where, why. And as long as we're able to answer that question on a piece of paper, who, what, when, where, why, that is essentially what's going to drive our companies to success. Did I get that?
Correct. And I think that the only way you're going to get those answers is to test. I think opinions are extremely important. And like everyone should have their opinions, everyone should have their hypotheses, especially everyone on your team. And everyone's ideas matter. I think the problem with that is usually the opinions are the end. And it's like, okay, well, this is our decision. We think we're going to do this, and that's it. Our customers are CrossFit bros, and we aren't going to budge from that. We need to figure out a way to make that happen. Like, force your product on these people who clearly don't want it. Or if they do, they can't afford to keep doing it, or there's too much competition. Like, there's just a lot of sort of barriers there versus sort of zooming out and like, how can we test CrossFit men and other people? And I feel like that is the difference between a Mark and John and some of the other brands I've worked with, where it's like pulling teeth. I'm even getting the approval to test some of this stuff. And I don't want to like name specific brands, obviously, but I could. Ones
Don't
that
do that. We keep this a very positive, gossip-free zone.
yeah, no gossip, but I will say that there's just a lot of brands that just I think they paid for it, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they could have really gone all the way had they sort of done that work. But when you have, like you said, like if everyone in your immediate network says, "Oh my God, this is amazing," if your investors are like, "Oh, well, we really like, you know, this aesthetic and this audience or whatever it is," like I understand why a lot of brands don't pivot when they should. But on the other hand, I'm just sort of like, take everyone's opinions and test it and let the data decide on like what the reality is. Because at the end of the day, the customer votes with their wallet. And if that, and like, it's their opinion that matters the most. And if the customers are saying this sports drink is a lactation supplement, then that's what the product should be. Unless you have a lot of money to force the sports drink, to the top, which most people don't.
Yeah. And even money, I think it's just a shortcut, but it's a shortcut. It's not to long-term success, in my opinion, because a good product is going to have to be able to sustain itself. Money is not, money could get you on the shelf, but it doesn't get people to keep on buying it every month.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's super cool. Now I think we got a really good business lessons here from like really from the trenches and really not just how to, but really less of a how to exactly what to do and much more of how to approach things from a philosophical perspective and how to really approach the marketplace. I'm curious about quite a few things as usual. But I'm curious about, are you strictly a D2C brand or have you got into retail?
We are 100% e-commerce, so we are on Shopify and have been since this pivot happened, and then we launched on Amazon about a year ago, and have seen a massive amount of success over the past 6 months, which has been great. Like we really love Amazon. It's been a really great channel for us. Um, we do want to go into retail at some point. Right now isn't the time for that.
I'm gonna press a little harder. Are you open to sharing what's stopping you from going into retail? Because that seems like a massive demographic that you're essentially choosing to ignore.
I mean, we want to go into retail. I mean, we are doing a rebrand, for our cartons, just to make them a little bit less, people like doing stuff that the average new mom isn't doing, like hanging off of a cliff or like like stuff like that. We really want to sort of keep the natural element of the brand without the actual like fitness piece. So we need to be more retail ready for that. Of course, like going into retail is very expensive. You need a lot of money, for slotting fees, for all of that. So we are actively looking, for our Series A at some point next year, to really like help fund that growth. And a few other things I can't share that we're working on, but we do want to go into retail at some point. But I firmly believe that like don't do something if you can't win. Does that make sense? And if we went into retail today, I don't think it would be good, just given like where we're at with the company. But I do think within 12 to 18 months, we will be retail ready, and we do have a pretty solid strategy for how we can like dominate that channel.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Before we transition to the end, what was your transition from working with them on the agency side to actually coming on as a CMO and co-founder?
So th- this pivot basically happened between fall of 2019 and like 2020 or so. So about a year when it was clear like there's something here. And we think it's a fluke, but it kept going up. Plus, as you know, 2020 saw e-commerce just like skyrocket. And I would say around summer of 2020, that's when I mean, I'd already been in the agency world for 5 years. And I mean, like you've been to Hawk Media, you know how many clients there are. And like, I was just sort of like, okay, I feel like I've gotten my MBA. I've learned all I can from all of these brands, from all of these case studies. And what I really want to do and what's best for the next step for me is to go in house and to put all of that to the test with one brand. And then on the greater than side, like I think I told you, like when I first tried the product, I don't know, there was just this feeling that I had that this isn't like the others. There's something about this that I think could really go all the way. And I still feel that way. I think that Greater Than is a versatile enough product, just like Pedialyte is. I mean, keep in mind, Pedialyte started for sick kids, and now they're the number one hangover drink in the world. They make $5 billion a year from hangovers, and they are a bigger company than Gatorade.
Wow.
But people don't know that because it's this boring business that sort of is off to the side. People don't even think about them as a behemoth. We feel like we have a very similar path. Only instead of it being kids and babies, it's moms who are giving this product enough credibility to really become mainstream. And we're already seeing it. Like this weird inception thing that's happening is now athletic men are starting to drink Greater Than as a sports drink because it has this credibility with moms. In fact, just yesterday I was at the gym and this guy at the desk asked me like what I was drinking, and I told him. And he was like, "Oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, if it's healthy enough for moms, it's going to be healthy enough for me." So it's crazy that we're seeing this weird circle where it's like it's working as a sports drink because it's a breastfeeding drink. And it's like I just feel like, yeah, it's just been a very interesting ride, and I'm just very, very excited to sort of see like where we can take the brand. And that was the thing that really prompted me to sort of leave. Plus, the other thing was like I just knew like at the end of the day, Graydon was only paying for like a certain percentage of my attention because I had other clients that I was working with at this agency, and I felt that if I could just focus everything on this one brand, we would blow up, and we did. Um, I mean, I'm not sure if like we mentioned this at the beginning, but we just made the Inc. 5000 yesterday. Uh,
Congrats!
yeah, thank you. Number 198, the fastest growing hydration product in the US, like number 8 within food and beverage. And that's all from this this massive growth that we've seen over the past few years, that really put us on the map. And that wouldn't have been possible if they were still a client. Like it's a brand that needs basically an entire marketing infrastructure built from the ground up. Um, and this pivot, like I don't personally know of any brands that have pivoted this hard, from being a drink aimed at CrossFit men to being a lactation drink. That takes time and a lot of testing, a lot of energy, and it just needed full-time attention. So I joined Greater Than full-time in fall of 2020, as their head of marketing. And then like once it became clear that this brand was a rocket ship, um, that's when I was officially named co-founder, and chief marketing officer. Um, I wasn't there from day one of the company, but since 99% of the revenue we've generated has come in the past 3 years, um, I've been honored to be a co-founder of this and to really help steer this ship in the best way I can.
So it sounds like out of all the brands you were working with, there was something was calling your name, and it might have even been the fact that the founders were so willing to really look at the data and listen.
Yes.
And like you mentioned before, it sometimes it takes forever to get approval. They actually were instead of you forcing guidance on them, they were looking to you for the guidance, and they really wanted to move in your direction.
Yeah, I mean, like we had a lot of mutual trust. I mean, I trusted them. Like I said, like there was no guarantee that this would even work. Like it could have been a fluke. Maybe there was only like a few thousand women that just happened to see the milk increase. Now that we're hundreds of thousands of women later, we know it's like it wasn't a fluke. And I feel like there has been a lot of mutual respect between the three of us, like really being in the trenches. And keep in mind, like 2 years ago, they were still hand packing every order in their garage and responding to
Wow.
every single customer service request. And like, I mean, really, really in the trenches. That just gives you an idea of how massive of a shift this has been. And it's been extremely like gratifying, to like be a part of that in some way. And like I said, to also like sell a product that helps a lot of people. Um, it not just helps a lot of people, helps a lot of moms feed their babies. Like it's something that I feel is very important. Um, like versus if I was, like selling phone cases. I could, and it could probably be an exciting job in some ways, but I feel like focusing on the health and nutrition of moms and babies is something that like did call out to me and really like solidified that this brand is one that I want to stick with and one that I think could really go all the way. Um, and I still feel that confident about it.
Uh, we're almost at the tail end. Is there anything you want to share in terms of how the company has been funded so far, etc.? Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
So up until last year, it was entirely bootstrapped by the co-founders and their family, extremely generous and again, very passionate and extremely unwavering in their confidence that this product is excellent. We just have to match make it with someone who gets that. Um, fortunately, we were able to bring in our first outside investors last December. They've been absolutely incredible, both in terms of providing the capital that allows us to see the ceiling. We've actually had enough inventory now to see like how high is high, and like our Amazon Prime Day last month like shattered every single expectation we had, and that was just 2 days. So it's like, but we can finally sort of realize how big this business can get. And they've also been incredible stewards of the financial piece. Like, keep in mind, like in December of last year, the recession or whatever we're in right now hadn't really started. The stock market hadn't crashed. Like, massive checks were still being written to a bunch of e-commerce brands. Like, the industry was a very different place in December of last year versus now. And immediately the investors were telling us, focus on contribution margin, focus on cash, focus on being, a very financially savvy business, and one that has a path to profitability and is a real business that has real revenue and real profit and a real cash flow, versus some of the other direct-to-consumer brands who have obviously struggled, who didn't. They had a lot of cash to grow their top line revenue and their staff. And that's pretty much it. So it's been incredible having them as like guardians and as mentors to help us prepare for all of that. And like I mentioned, from a top line standpoint, we haven't seen any drop off in our marketing performance. If anything, it's better. And now we're finally able to match make that top line success with the bottom line infrastructure that we're building, thanks to these great investors who have come on. But we are
Wow.
looking to do a Series A next year so we can really play offense, go into retail, expand, and see how high is.
Are you doing anything else in terms of marketing, whether it's sampling events, stuff like that, or are you really strictly just doing the online stuff?
It's 100% online, social media. We do some influencer gifting, and a lot of other stuff, which I could talk about in the future podcast, because we are trying to do a little bit more organic. But we don't do any brick and mortar. We don't do sampling. Like I said, our inventory has been so lean because we keep selling out. We just haven't been able to even think about that. We just go to where we're getting the lowest acquisition cost and the highest lifetime value customers. And as of now, that's still Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and word of mouth.
And that's all paid ads.
It's a mix. I mean, like, our organic and word of mouth is growing as time goes on. Plus, a lot of those moms who were our first cohort back in 2019 have had their second kids. So they're coming back, So it's like, it's not like one silver bullet. We sort of test everything, but consistently we see that paid ads help supplement the word of mouth, and they all sort of work in harmony.
Wow, this has been incredible. I'll ask you one last question.
Yeah.
But before that, I just want to thank the audience. We're on LinkedIn Live, we're on YouTube Live, and Facebook Live streamed the brand spotlight, and the replays will be available on all those platforms, and it will also be repurposed as an audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever you find your favorite podcast app as the brand spotlight. This has been episode 11 of the brand spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us early in on our journey as we interview fascinating people and really highlighting their brands, their stories, and inspirations. Brian, thank you. Any parting words, and where can we find you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been an amazing conversation, and one that I hope has added a lot of value, to the listeners, especially ones who, are still trying to figure out their path forward, and what their pivot could be, for their business, or if they've already found product market fit, how they can sort of, inject more testing, more customer focused decision making into their business practices. In terms of where to find me, it's probably best on LinkedIn, just like Brian Alston. which I think you'll be able to see in the show notes. And
There's some audio listeners, so if we could, I'll
Oh.
just spell it out. Bryan. That's the spelling for Brian. So
Yes.
Brian with a Y at the end. And then Alston is Alston.
Correct. Yes. And then I'm also on Twitter. So it's my last name, ALSTONDTC. That's just my handle. So like Alston direct to consumer. And yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter would be the best places to find me. If you are breastfeeding or pregnant or know anyone who is, of course, Greater Than is the drink that I recommend for that. So yeah, I am super honored to be here, and I look forward to hopefully coming back in the future.
Thank you.